Mr. Speaker, this bill is named the Charlie Kirk Act because we certainly know that those that disagreed with his ability to speak freely assassinated him.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 1 requires each public higher education institution to adopt policies on freedom of expression and the institution's role in political and social action, prohibits disinviting speakers due to threats of protest, or prohibiting student organizations or faculty members for inviting guest speakers of their choice, grants protection to the viewpoint of faculty members as expressed in their work, and prohibits discrimination based on religious beliefs or viewpoints on abortion, homosexuality, or transgender behavior.
My first question is, if there is a speaker that is being slated to come to a college campus that is basically known for or has been on record of stating innuendos around committing violence against certain groups, or have committed acts of violence, or encourages their following to commit acts of violence against certain group of peoples, would a university be prohibited from being able to tell that group that no, they can't speak on campus because of the history of violence that they are expressing or have expressed and if not caused?
Senator Rose.
Thank you for the question. It absolutely would allow them to prohibit someone that had expressed a desire to harm or just a violent act. They could not. They could keep them from speaking. Yes.
Senator Lamar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if the student group is hosting an event that ends up turning into a big public safety issue and it causes some type of damage on campus or anything like that, who would be responsible for being held civically responsible for paying the cost of any adverse situations or negative situations that come from that group hosting an event?
Senator Rose.
Thank you for the question. Senator, I'm not exactly sure that I can answer that. I would say that it would be the university's responsibility, or the public institution's responsibility, to make sure that safety was in place, whatever that took. It could be the local sheriffs, could be the local police, and it would be up to them to make sure that the safety of the speaker and the students, both those that favor the speaker and those that disagreed with the speaker, they would have that avenue to express their thoughts.
Senator Lamar.
Last question. Thank you, and thank you for your indulgence to answer my question. My last question is, if there is a group that is that's been invited to come that is currently on the FBI's hate list group or any other watch list, would the university have the opportunity to deny their attendance?
Senator Rose.
I don't think they'd have only the option. I think it'd be required that they deny them if they're on that federal watch list.
Leader Hackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield?
Sponsor yields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Based on this legislation, I just want some clarity. If a student group or a speaker was openly racist or endorsed discrimination against certain groups of people or excluded certain groups of people, they would still be allowed to speak on campus or have a group on campus. Is that correct?
Senator Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that speech that is racist is outlawed, and they would not be allowed to be on there. If they were someone that was known to be a racist and advocated for offenses against a certain race, they would not be allowed.
Leader Hackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we already have the First Amendment in place that protects freedom of speech. Our campus universities have a certain degree of discretion on the policies that they set up. Why are we choosing to adopt policies from almost over 10 years ago from a private institution, University of Chicago. This is Tennessee. Why did we choose this particular framework?
Senator Rose.
Thank you for the question. Senator, this bill is modeled after what they did at the University of Chicago, as you've already mentioned, in 2015, and it's considered a model policy for allowing free speech on campuses. We also are bringing this, as I've already stated, because there are those across our of course, we're just dealing with Tennessee, but there have been those that have been have not been able to speak because of their views, and most times it's because of their conservative views. In some cases, they were invited, and then they were disinvited. So what we're trying to do here is just allow freedom of speech as we're guaranteed in the Second Amendment.
Leader Hackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we do have freedom of speech protections already on campus. I think it gives the university discretion when there's a possible safety issue or any sort of issue that they find relevant. So my next question has to do with the neutrality piece. So we are saying that universities are not able to engage if there is a serious civil rights violation or issue. Universities must remain neutral. Is that correct?
Senator Rose.
I'm sorry to ask you to do this, but I had something else going on. Would you repeat the question? Thank you.
Leader Hackberry, repeat the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, so what I was saying is there's also a neutrality portion of this legislation. So are we saying that we want our universities to be neutral when we have major civil rights issues that are occurring either on campus or nationally? Are they not able to speak? Because neutrality is not something that's inclusive. It's actually something that's suppressive. Sometimes you do have to take a stand. So would this not allow our universities to do that?
Senator Rose.
Thank you again for the question. This bill is specific that the universities will stay neutral. This is to allow the students to participate, not the universities.
Leader Hackberry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'll just say this. I think ultimately a university, I was actually on Vanderbilt's campus 2 days ago on a panel, and I met some of the young ladies there, and I was reminded that I graduated from college 20 years ago. And I'm one of the younger members of this General Assembly. College campuses are designed for people to learn and grow and stretch, meet new people, gain perspectives, whether that perspective is conservative, liberal, or in between. And we already have freedom of speech protections in place. I think that this legislation unfortunately restricts universities in ways that they really weren't created to be restricted in. Neutrality often means silence. We want our students to be able to feel safe on college campuses. I think it's us that politicize these issues, not the administrations, and certainly not the students on campus. And to me, this is just more legislative intervention into spaces that already are constitutionally protected, really getting into some ideology as opposed to leaning into the freedom of speech concept. And as the sponsor said, it does go both ways. So I hope that when more liberal causes or Black Lives Matters or other groups like that, that many in this legislature don't agree with, when they themselves try and have space on these campuses, that they are allowed to do the same thing. But the bottom line for me, Mr. Speaker, is that these students deserve the right to learn, grow, and be in a safe environment. And I think that this legislature is so off base from that and overly restrictive. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Leader Hackberry. Any comments, Senator Rose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My comment to the senator from Shelby would just be this is exactly what this bill does. It just allows freedom of speech.
Senator Pody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm actually a co-sponsor on this piece of legislation myself. This is just a piece of legislation to make sure that any student can express themselves in a safe environment. It's not trying to tell the university to make judgments. It's just trying to tell the university that every single student has the right to express where they are, and it's up to the students to be explaining their positions, and they can have their freedom of speech. With that, I call for the question.
Senator Pody, Senator Oliver was seeking recognition. Could we hear from her? Okay.
I'll yield to her and call for the question after.
Okay, thank you, Senator Pody. Senator Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I was going to yield for a question. Okay.
Sponsor yields.
Yes, so I was just seeking clarity on trying to make sure I frame my question right. Does this give sort of preferential treatment to certain students who have a position on a speaker versus those who don't? I'm trying to understand how this does not create a sort of two-tiered freedom of speech situation.
Senator Rose.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for the question. And if you read the bill, and as I said earlier, it swings both ways. There can be no preference for a speaker invited by a student organization. So it is not for that purpose at all. It's strictly to allow freedom of speech. And I think the bill clearly states that, but I do appreciate the question.
Senator Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It does appear that we have freedom of speech in this country, and with this legislation, what we are doing is cherry picking speech that we might agree with as sort of the preferred level of speech, and we're creating sort of a sort of two-tiered type of protection when it comes to freedom of speech. In the bill, it names drowning out speakers with noise, standing between speakers and audience to block view, deciding whether protest in opposition to an event like this, that is also speech. And so it seems like we are sort of contradicting ourselves in this legislation by tamping down certain types of speech to allow other types of speech. So that is my point I'm trying to make, is we're actually not giving the freedom of speech in this legislation by restricting certain types of speech. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any other question or comment? Senator Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to follow up on that very point. I believe firmly in making sure that our campuses are places to debate ideas fairly. They should be contested, even if they're uncomfortable. And this legislature actually spent a lot of time drafting careful legislation to ensure that we would have policies to do just that several years ago. And we have not seen any indication that those are not working. But what we're doing here, in the name of free expression, the actionable parts of this are frankly at odds with the policy. We say we want an area where ideas are contested, but what it does is it creates a pathway to crack down on free expression. Walking out of a room during a speech is one of the simplest, easiest, least obstructive forms of expression known to man. It's been around since the beginning of the Republic. And we're creating a policy where that can be cracked down on, where signs are subject to regulation, where counter speech can be regulated. In the name of free speech, we're giving the speakers a right to speak and the audience a right to sit quietly and listen. That's not free speech. That's not consistent with the Chicago principles. And it's not consistent with frankly, it's just not consistent with what the rhetoric of this bill is. And so if we're going to do free expression, I'm all for it, but we shouldn't, in the name of free expression, crack down on it.
Thank you, Senator Yarbrough. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Senator Rose, you want to close or you want to take a vote?
I think we've had plenty of discussion on this, but I'll say this. I have read this bill, I've looked at it, and I'll repeat what I said earlier. It swings both ways. It gives folks the freedom to express how they feel on college campuses, universities, without being asked not to. But, Mr. Speaker, I'll renew my motion. Thank you.
Senator Rose renews his motion on Senate Bill 1741. We'll be voting on Senate Bill 1741. All in favor will vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed will vote no. Taylor votes aye. Has everyone voted?
No, it's right here.
Everyone voted. Any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 26, 6 nays.
Senate Bill 1741, having received the constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed. Without objection, the motion to reconsider goes to the table. Mr. Clerk, next bill.